Expected to make it, so
Logical Raptors fanatic.
shoot trying to miss. Like every shot
Logical Raptors fanatic.
try to make it, so I was gonna act surprised.
A fun guy. Obviously,
Logical Raptors fanatic.
love the game of basketball. I mean, it's just more questions you have to ask me in order for me to tell you about.
Logical Raptors fanatic.
I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
No
Project Truth.
has contacted me, and I see all the stuff that, like, you guys see. I dream like they dream. Yeah. Yeah, I want,
Logical Raptors fanatic.
you know. Yeah, so they keep dreaming. I dream too.
Salute, real ones. Mike G back here with Logical Raptors fanatic. Logical Phase 2, full steam ahead. And interesting timing. Chris Boucher dropped his first episode of the season of Hustle Play, and it kind of encapsulates the theme of today's video in a sense and my prior reading of the situation. So today's going to be an interesting one. Let's dive deeper into it. Enjoy.
Think, and there's something a little hint here, drop. I'm gonna go into something, but I think he's a mentor for Koloko to teach him our Raptors ways. And there's another part for it. You're gonna have to wait for it. It's a little sneak preview, but
So that time is finally now after, well, it's been a couple months. It's been 3 months in total since I've started making YouTube content, but ultimately I want to lay a lot of groundwork to kind of get to this point. And I think it's really key for me to now define recipe and the difference between mold. I think recipe applies to like time, like the time to bake the cake, you know what I mean? The analogy you were using in the original recipe video, right? It's the time to the bake the cake, the touches and all this kind of stuff. But mold is player type, and that's based on skills, body, IQ, all types of different things. But mold applies to type of player, where recipe probably more applies to level of talent, and each recipe is different for levels of talent, right? For different talent, it takes more time, and some talent, it takes less time, right? So the recipe is different regarding touches and roll and time and stuff like that. But the mold is specifically talking about physical characteristics of a specific position and player, right? So let's see, let's get more context on what the mold is we're going to be talking about today.
another option of going for an extra tall center that can't get abused on switches, that's able to keep up with perimeter guarding. Because I think in the playoffs, that's what you do. You target the center in pick and roll actions, you target them out, bring them out to the perimeter, kind of dribble drive game, make them drop, and then you got room for like mid range. And that's how most kind of scoring is done in the playoffs. You abuse the center, make him drop, and then use that space to shoot. And those guys that can shoot the mid range get a lot of points and get a lot of play from that. Because I think the 3 point line's being guarded heavy, the rim's being guarded heavy, but the center can be abused on both the perimeter and kind of in the mid range. So we need a guy that has quick feet, that's able to keep up 7-footers that are that fast and kind of nimble like that are rare. So I think that's why I think everyone's kind of really big on Koloko, because he's shown some of those skills and maybe has the ability to kind of play that position for us. So I think
So ultimately, it's really interesting that that position in general, right? I think it's a newer direction based on the other positions becoming so dynamic, right? And it's Masai's ability to kind of see the younger prospects and kind of project the body types and play style and where the game's going, and then in turn build that start working on these issues earlier than most, so when they become more applicable, you have a legitimate mold that you can have to like kind of build up that player that you really need that becomes, like Masai said in the last video, fit, that actually fits. It's rare to find those guys that actually fit. And it when you get one, you need to have everything kind of working and together and the mold nice and tight to where you want him to grow and what kind of style you want him to play, right? And we said styles move down from player to player, like a bar is set. And we're going to look at that and quantify that a little bit more now. But understanding that Project 6-8 Center Type 1 is the switchable mobile shot blocker, which is a mix of Gasol and Ibaka, like the better sides of both. Like, because we had to play them separately, but they had both intricate skills, and we're going to go into it, right? But let's look at beta version 1, which was Boucher, which was like they had an idea of what they wanted to create with this player, and he had the size and speed to become that, right? And so they started to test this theory out, right? And I think there's other versions, pre-versions, and we can go into it now, Delta version, Bismack. But see, to play this role, you need guys that have great stamina and energy and effort to continuously just keep going after rebounds, continuously getting bodied and keep coming. There's a certain will and strength that is needed to be an elite center in the NBA because of the physical play. You're basically sprinting up court to go wrestle a guy, and then you sprint back to go wrestle another guy, and it's so on, right? It's exhausting. It's an immensely exhausting position. And that's why centers tend to get hurt, and there's a lot of injuries that are involved with playing in the post, but that's the part of the physical game, and that's understood by most teams and players. They understand what sacrifices you make to play there, but that's where you get the easiest buckets. And they're not and teams deter people from getting the easiest buckets. So I think having a player that is kind of quick and defensive and able to react. The original, no, 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 no. Bismack is my father, Biombo. He had a great mentality, length, speed, but his IQ wasn't able to kind of pattern him out to be a more than a bench player. But I think ultimately we saw the results from that. The best results against LeBron was the two Eastern Conference Finals wins in 2016, and this was our starting center, Bismack Biyombo, Mr. No No No. So like there are tendencies, and that's the reason why kind of JV we Masai already had JV, and JV was a quality prospect and a player and a piece, but defensively he wasn't what we needed for the type of style that Masai and everyone here wants to play, whereas a defense first kind of built up off of that, right? And this is an interesting. They want to mainline this center type as the starter, but then have two other types. So type 2 would be like kind of the heavy set Gasol, like Pirtle type, right? Where he would be situational and create stability for bigger bodies and be able to play that kind of push and pull game and have two guys that kind of can both manage at that, but then have another center 3 type, which is like a precious mold, like a smaller Montrezl Harrell type, but that actually plays tremendous defense that is extremely switchable and ridiculously mismatch heavy on the normal centers in the league. Like we heard the downfalls of the regular centers of today, where they're more slow footed and stuff. It's important that we have all types, right? Because different situations are going to call for different players, right? And we need to understand that it's it's about being versatile, right? And having our most versatile guy as our starter is key. That is kind of a mix of both guys, but then we want to have the ability to mainline both other types. So that's how we look at our three center spots and how we're kind of molding. And these are the molds that we're looking to get out of different players. So Boucher was kind of another test off the Bismack thing, right? Because he came in a couple of years after, right? I think we were looking at Serge Ibaka also as that kind of power forward center switchable piece. And we saw how Nick utilized Serge, and that's how he wants this kind of center to be able to play. He wants him to be able to play power forward and center. I think playing multiple roles and having no true position and being able to play multiple positions is key for the type of basketball we want to play that keeps us unpredictable and extremely playoff built, right? So I think let's take a look. We can just ignore this year. It was interesting on today, or well, the day of recording. Lex was talking about how Chris Boucher was in Golden State and has some mentoring from those guys in Golden State, like Kevin Durant was there that year, right? You know what I mean? It was the second championship year, right? So there are similarities, and I think it's interesting his thought on defense. And I'm not going to get into too much of a large tangent, but that hustle play video does confirm a lot of the themes that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, building up towards this logical phase 2. So let's check it out. So games played 28, games started. See, they want this guy to start, right? 34 minutes, point two, right? Large role. Field goals made, 9.7. Field goals attempted, 19. So big role, lots of shots. They want to test his around his basket touch, and they want to see mainlining this type of center in case all other options are being defended, and this guy has to literally be the one to carry, like Chris Boucher did recently in one of the games of close to recording here, right? So 509 is decent with the volume of threes because we always have to look at volume, and it's a large volume. So 1/3 of his shots pretty much coming from three, and the clip obviously improved. And that's a decent, respectable clip where you need to worry about this guy and actually come up and somewhat guard him. Like you can't fully sleep on this guy, right? And that's the range of where his three-pointer was at that time. I think that's a key aspect to the the power forward position and the center position that the Raptors want, that versatility of spacing and allow other people to drive and do other things and not have just the center stationary in the dunker spot. And he needs to be guarded on the 3-point line as well, right? but also 2-pointers are crucial. And see, that's a great percentage for the type of shots he was getting, 2-pointers. And his body, he can't really push through people, so he shoots over them in a sense, and like shoots through physicality in a sense, right? So he's decent at this level, but we're going to talk about the body types. Obviously, I brought it up last week, and I think this is where the key aspect of why this Boucher version was only beta and G League viable. But let's continue on and round out this whole thing. See a decent free throw percentage, so you can't hack a Shaq Boucher in a sense. He'll nail most of his free throws and hit a good clip, so you need to respect him and not foul him, right? And then we see like a decent percentage of offensive rebounds. So he's crashing the offensive boards, but he's also taking care of business on the defensive boards for a monster 11.4. So double double kind of player, right? Easily double double, at least points and rebounds. I think rebounding is key because I think in the Tampa season we saw that with a poor shooting team, not heavily investing in the rebounding hurt us completely and made us like a kind of worse team, even though we were kind of mirroring Baines and Gasol and Ibaka and Lynn with Ibaka, Lynn, and Boucher, yeah, mirroring those type of styles. We were kind of thin on the rebounding, and that's why we couldn't get possessions and continuously were like one and done and not doing too much of winning, right? So I think this type has always been key to them. And Bismack Biyombo is a big sign of the the kind of power in a sense that this role can have at certain times, right? So let's continue through though. And assists, obviously 1.1. He's more of a finisher around the basket and stuff. You throw it into him. But he can, if there's a double team, he might pass out and stuff. I think that's key, and that needed to go up, I think. But ultimately, we know Boucher, it's based on an experience IQ game thing where he was kind of delayed his first year coming in, and we're going to see what he does about it in the next season. But let's continue on. So 1.3 steals, really nice. Monster 4.1 blocks on the season. Uh, Higher turnovers than you would probably want, but he's taking a lot of shots. He's doing a lot of different things, testing a lot of new role stuff. So you have to kind of take that with proper context and understand that this is early, rough, first year mold of a guy, right? And 20 monster 27.2 points, easily G League MVP, defensive player of the year material, right? But I think as we've looked at other G League stats, let's look at the kind of upped version of that playoff version of what they were looking at, because I think this is the key. We were talking about a lot in that introduction clip there about the playoffs and how centers perform in the playoffs. So let's see how this translates in the G League playoffs. And so we played 2 games, started 2 games, played 40 minutes, so played almost the whole game pretty much. Increased his attempts by 1, and obviously tougher defense, so his makes went down a sliver, right? His free throws reflect, or his total free throw percentage reflects that. But let's dive deeper into the results and numbers and balance of what they're looking for. So 3 ball looks about the same. Obviously, it's going to be tougher. They're going to be closing out on him. They're not going to give him any freebies in the playoffs. Most of the defenders are a lot more effort inspired and better when you're facing the top tier teams. Like, it's easy to get clean shots off poor defending teams, but how do you perform against the tougher competition, right? I think that's where the true tests lie, and where we take our best information and weigh those different information chunks a lot higher, but give it all proper context, right? So similar attempts. So they wanted to shoot a decent amount of threes, so that opens up the drive game in space. Obviously, they're going to be guarding the rim higher, like we said, 3-point line and rim, right? And he wasn't great in the mid range at that point, so obviously it was showing a bit, but his speed and athleticism was still, he was able to be effective even against tougher defenses and better center talents, right? In the G League, right? The smaller body size is key with weighing these stats and looking at it, because the AHL model, like hockey, it's about the smaller body size. There's usually one or two there's a handful of vets in the whole league, but most of them are younger guys in their younger 20s that are in the same body position timeline. And that's where you can get certain, maybe truer stats from earlier competition. And that's why I think I like looking at the G League stats, especially early on for the first year, to kind of gauge, because I think body type and appropriate scaling up is where this is going to be, right? So free throws, hit his clutch free throws 1000%. So it looks like this guy's a gamer, a battler, right? He's going to turn up, right? All right. Total rebounds, obviously a little bit less, but obviously you're going to have more boxing out and more transition defense, so less easy opportunities. In playoffs, it's all about how hard are you going to work to get your points and who has the skills to make things easier, right? And I think because of his mismatch at center, this really shined. And these are unbelievable metrics what they were got. This is just a basic stat table, but the the Raptors track like every stat like they could think of, every role, position, play, every different thing is calculated and fed into a system, and all the information is kind of at Masai and Bobby's fingertips to kind of look back at a lot of these things and see track trends like I'm doing here. But I'm more of a basic term trying to expand the idea. Hopefully we can get into more complicated analytics, but I think it's just for a good sampling and to keep things simple and easy. We're going to continue with just the basic stats for now as we build up that knowledge, right? So so total rebounds, okay, a little bit less, but still battling hard. Assists similar, right? Steals went up, blocks went up, plays a lot more D and more focused in the paint D, right? So that's going to go up, and he's showing translation. Turnovers a little bit one higher, but that's the playoffs, right? Everyone's playing tighter D, more effort. They're giving it all in the playoffs, right? Personal fouls, the game is a little bit different, faster, better talent. So he's going to foul a bit. He's still in his rookie kind of year with us. And we talked about it last set, right? And points 22.5. So I think this is the perfect model of what they would like to see as the beginning marker, as a beta, like beta one, right? And I think ultimately they took this plan, and at the end of the year they converted Chris Boucher not to really play, but to come and start soaking up knowledge. Let's hold on. Let me explain it again quickly here. Hold on. That year they wanted him to come on the run in 2019 to be like, not to play, but to see how everything is, see the environment, see the coaching style, the adjustments, the game plans, like get ingrained with the way we run a playoff program, and kind of let him start sponging off Serge Ibaka, which was a great power forward for years and has tons of knowledge at that position, and Marc Gasol, a great center that has great defensive knowledge and ability, high IQ defender at that position. I think you want him to start sponging things up quickly, as as quick as possible, right? And I think both those guys, Ibaka and Gasol, were great at trying to like help him learn. And it obviously shows with his development. All right, so these are like, let's actually quantify and add context, because we've talked a lot about the mentality, And Chris did touch on it in his most recent hustle play video where he learned dog and taking charges from Lowry. And I think that's just a mentality as a player and stuff like that. And charges are obviously important and part of this part, right? But I think mentality is different from mold, and I think mold skills based on position and experience in the league. It's years and years of playing that position that that these mentors have, right? And can give these guys. So when they're learning up their own skills, they learn it the right way. Because if you have someone there that kind of knows what your road looks like pre-head of the plan, and you start doing certain things, they can correct your work to make sure you're doing the right work that's effective because they have the experience at the position to know these different things, right? And I think that's where Masai says that bringing in certain guys like Kawhi, DeMar, Lowry, Marc Gasol, and Ibaka raised the bar with their experience and what they gave to our program, the kind of development that our mold got from them and Boucher. Like it takes all three of these guys to really help us build up the next part that we're gonna go into with Koloko. Go no. But we're gonna talk and try to translate some of this stuff and see the trends and stylings and knowledge that these guys. Not everything here is going to be directly what Boucher shows. But these are the type of stuff that these guys had with experience and knowledge of playing in the playoffs, finals, and many playoff battles with the Clips and all types of different teams. They're both very experienced vets, really strong defensively. Well, Serge was stronger defensively early, but obviously athleticism and injuries zap slowly physical players. So he needed to kind of evolve his game, and he came to us to kind of do that. And he does have a lot of respect, and both these guys still have a connection to our team. Like Ibaka was working out with Boucher this summer in 2022, and he's been off the team for a while now, right? So I think there's connections made long term, and Boucher has the ability always, if Konono needs some advice, he can go and talk to either two of these guys because they've built a solid relationship, a pure relationship of two guys really trying to help Chris try to make it in the league, right? Understanding this guy's story and what great person he is and what a true person he is and wanting to help him. And I think mentors like this really matter and kind of set the direction of certain things. And I want to get to this part a little bit more. It was going to take a little bit building up, but Masai said it very clear last week where he thinks of how players bring something to the team and raise the bar, and it's up to the next guys to carry that bar and push it forward, right? So let's look at the bar kind of these guys set and what Chris was sponging that year because we talked about sponging the clip just then. Obviously, from the Chris Raptors recipe Boucher video, right? So position movements. Power forward Ibaka. So position movements at the power forward position, like patrolling the paint and being an add-on to the center, right? He played that role for many years in OKC and was a blocker for a reason, right? And I think he was teaching Boucher how to kind of be threatening and have that presence of like they won't even try a shot because look who Ibaka's there. And he might that's the best way to kind of defend from not even them attempting a shot. And that's part of veteran IQ stuff. And Chris had to build that up more as he became more skilled. But that like dirty mentality that he's trying to give to Koloko now is a clear evidence of some of these types of things and this whole theme of this video, which he did say in the hustle play. Thank you, Boucher, for like laying down some great groundwork. It was already going to happen this video, but you just made it that much better. Thank you, man. I love you, Chris Boucher. But okay, so we'll look at shot blocking timings, like we said. Shot blocker. These go hand in hand in a sense, like power forward position movements, when to kind of go guard the like the arc, and you know what I mean? Go guard a guard pretty much, and when to recover back, and all this type of different power forward stuff where they're managing the inside paint, but they're also managing perimeter threats as well, right? And that takes IQ and experience to help Chris, that didn't had a limited amount of like basketball experience. But this is why you get good mentors in here that really matter, and I think it's really shown in Chris's game over time how he's really improved these aspects, all these aspects. But they all started originally here and shaping his workouts and different things he was doing, right? So mid-range shooting, right? PF Ibaka. Ibaka was great from the elbow, and you see kind of Chris kind of having similar plays, his own different style, a little bit more running in motion and less plant heavy like Ibaka was in the pick and roll. But Chris adapts to the best players. That's what these guys have to do. If you're not your most talented player, you're brought here because your gifts complement our best player, and you need to play your best skills, right? It's not about playing what you're not good at, right? So I think ultimately knowing shot selection and timing and different things really helped. Obviously, Chris understand that pick and roll game a lot better in a sense of like that stopping, and you know what I mean, that stopping halfway and kind of maybe throwing up a shot when the defense is collapsed instead of going in there and getting like bodied, right? But and then we'll go to the next point, bodying strats. Ibaka was really good at kind of vet bodying people and not getting too many fouls, but he'd make you pay. He'd make you pay. You wouldn't want to come into the paint when Ibaka was there because he's going to be really physical and really like on the edge, really good kind of clean play in a sense. Some things may seem dirty, but that's the part of the bodying strats. You got to know when you can do those sort of things, and looking at refs and knowing timings. And Ibaka has all that knowledge. Most of the refs are very older and do kind of help guide the next ref. So if you have an understanding of how you're doing things in the post, where you're not getting a foul called on you, and and you're getting a foul called on them because you got great positioning. And I think now Boucher's showing a lot of that right now with his offensive rebounding and the way he positions himself in the post. And he's the one that they're fouling to stop, right? So I think a lot of these things have matured out in Boucher, and we're seeing a lot of these different things, but originally started with these guys right here. And it was important for him, even though he didn't play a lot of minutes this year, and it was like a no minute year. He was absorbing all of this whole year and preparing for the test in Tampa. Well, we'll get to that, but let's continue. So IQ position walling, obviously center Gasol. That's a really great strategy of putting your hands up and kind of using your length and positioning to kind of impede shots and make them more difficult. So they have to put a higher arc, and that changes the percentage chances on that type of shot. So you're always trying to look to force them into a lower percent shot, and that's how you have to play, right? I think floaters obviously is different from a layup, and specific guys have great floaters, and Gasol would get beat on the floater, but he wouldn't get beat on the like right to the cup, straight to the cup, right? And I think that's where he limits IQ decisions and risking and knowing where to wall at what time in order for it not to be like a blow by, and it pushes the offensive player to kind of react to Gasol defending, right? And I think he's starting to get a bit more like that. Obviously, this takes the most time in a sense, and that's why centers take a while, especially defensive centers, to understand this point right here. This is kind of the creme de la creme in defensive positioning. And Gobert is really good at this type of stuff, but his speed is really a detriment. And I think the way the NBA is moving, see, Rudy Gobert would be excellent in the era Marc Gasol was, but we're moving forward, and you have to infuse more of a speedier kind of center type, where we saw Ibaka being a little bit more mobile and switchable, right? And he was able to do a lot of different other things as well. But we want, like I said, the real way to build up team roster strength is combining roles into one guy and trying to do that, right? It might not always work out and it's not going to go perfect, but we learn from our mistakes and we'll refine the process till when we get it perfect in a sense, right? So let's continue on. Passing and cutting, center Gasol. So passing and cutting off screens, and you know what I mean? Like passing to different guys. If he's holding the ball during a screen and he's laying a screen, well, he has the ball and he's doing a handoff or a pass over a guy or something. That's the type of stuff Gasol was great at and really understood. Obviously, Gasol was even better at hitting cutters and stuff. And Boucher's not that level of passer, but Marc Gasol's understanding of how players need to cut to the basket help Boucher, right? So there's different aspects that aren't going to directly translate, but there are aspects that directly add to the game, right? The game of the player, not specifically in that format, right? So it's not like you're looking for the exact same guy. You're trying to instill all this knowledge and pass this experience down through a guy and help him learn quicker, right? Mentors are there to help younger guys learn quicker and learn the right stuff quicker, right? So I think getting the guys that know the right stuff and have the great experience and respect in the league really matter, right? And 3-point shooting, obviously, both of them would do pick and pop stuff, right? Ibaka, short pop, go to the rim. Gasol less going to the rim, but he'd get a layup once or two, but he'd pop a lot, right? So I think helping him to understand when to pop and what to do when certain defenders are guarding the pick and roll in a certain way and where his openings are, and kind of forming. It's interesting, like his shot selection this year has been sort of like he starts out and maybe might do like an Ibaka kind of wing three, right? And if he doesn't hit it, he might move to the corner or try another wing three before he moves to the corner. But that was Ibaka's kind of niche the last year that he was here, right? The run it back year, right? This year. And I think it's really interesting how you could see the shades of that in Chris now, in a similar way where Ibaka was sacrificing and doing whatever the team needed, and now Boucher is kind of in that role doing similar stuff, right? And then there's also another element of not getting beat by smaller guards on quick rotations and IQ plays and knowing how to preemptively kind of hedge against different plays. Like we were saying, people were hedging against Siakam. A center needs to learn how to hedge against faster players being a slower guy, right? And rotations on smaller bodies is a kind of an art and a science in a bit. It takes a lot of IQ to know when to play front and kind of drop back and do a lot of different things that Marc Gasol was really good at, walling off the post. And I think that in combination with blocking, shot blocking, and all this stuff in combination would make a monster. And that's what I think Fred was kind of hinting at when he said like Chris Boucher is almost like 99% effort and it and 1% like kind of IQ and experience. And if he put more IQ and experience into his game, and which he has, right? And we've seen it because that was a while back when he said this, right? But you could see how it changes players, right? And we can see that, and I can see it. And that's what I'm trying to point out with these different mold types and trying to cement this stuff a little bit harder. But let's see how that translates to the here and now more and talk on our man Konono.
Of in the corner, maybe trying his three. I saw his shot. His shot, it's better than Chris's. He has a natural shot form. So I think ultimately it's more to work with, I think, regarding shooting to get a more consistent kind of shooter. I think Koloko can be like a taller, better Chris Boucher and kind of have that same energy, kind of same speed. Well, I think Koloko might be a little bit faster than Chris, but Chris can still keep up with kind of the power forwards and small forward guys and kind of not get too abused on the perimeter. But I think ultimately his size held him back, like his height. I think really it's about height sometimes, and I think he just if he was like a couple inches taller, he'd definitely be like, wow, he could have made tons of money. But unfortunately, yeah, we are who we are, and I think Chris is still has a great role.
Obviously, that takes from the summer before we got to see like this what we've seen from Konono of recent. And it was more of understanding the mold system and what exactly they were looking for and understanding what aspects of his game fit that mold and understanding what happened in a sense with Boucher and why Coloco's here now in a sense of what they looked at in this new mold type version 2 of the recipe, right? In a sense of more just the version 2 of the mold and a heightened, more refined mold, higher talent. So obviously he's going to get less G League games, but we've talked about strength of roster and stuff like that before. No need to get into it. But I think Koloko, we'll get into it a little bit more, but let's hear the rest of my original take based on the Rico Hines runs and playing real NBA talent and the stuff I saw.
Koloko is an interesting prospect. He still needs time to work on his IQ and in his post play. I think he can get pulled away from the play he's supposed to be guarding right now. Or he's maybe being told to put an effort into guarding the perimeter a lot, get your feet going, start learning how these guards kind of try to slip you and do stuff to you. That possession on Harden was pretty interesting and cool. Showed a great like ability to kind of lower his center of gravity really low and get his legs kind of almost like coming out the back a bit. You saw how low he got. That's really important, I think, for centers because they can get pushed off if their center of gravity is a lot higher and they're not really heavy. And I think him being a former soccer player has him having great balance. That's all balance. Being able to do that, that's being able to balance with your freaking plant foot like far, far, far out. Because the guy could slip you because he could take pressure off and then you kind of fall on your butt. So it's about balance. You got to be able to push on that. And I think that's important for centers playing on the perimeter because it stops the guard from driving, being able to just drive through the center and kind of forcing him to push back and drop.
So now that there's more tape on Kanano, there I can definitely give a more analyzed and detailed kind of breakdown. But I saw the initial signs of his kind of elite switchability from his speed, his balance, and all those things that kind of his height, obviously, height and balance were the things that limited Chris from being able to guard most of the centers in the league at the moment. Like heftiness and like great great ability to lower your center of balance to keep all that like that weight in that kind of lower stance, like the way football players play, kind of let it get low because it's easier to push people over standing up, right? And I think Chris never had worked on his legs quite as well as Konono did as a soccer player, and that kind of gives him an edge in a sense and more of a capability to play that center position to be this kind of alpha version one that I think he can be, but obviously nothing's set in stone. We need to see how the numbers project out and see how it does. But I think initially, obviously, he's he's definitely shown IQ. Like I was questioning his IQ, but I think it was based on him. They were pushing him to do different stuff in the runs to prepare him better, almost like a pre-G League season, right? In a sense of forcing him to play a certain role so he gets a lot of minutes in that sort of role. So when sometimes he has to use it at the NBA level, he's ready to kind of play and kind of be called out and not like abused as much. That was obviously a first initial plan, easy like kind of startup piece, right? Then the blocking, letting him kind of figure out the timing, go for everything, kind of realize like you're gonna foul sometimes, but start to kind of develop that timing and understanding of how certain players play and kind of the different moves at the NBA level that they do to kind of like fake shots. And Chris used to bite on so much stuff, right? And that's part of it too, right? But now Chris obviously bites on less stuff because he knows and has more experience in IQ. And I think that was important for Koloko to focus then. But I was determining, I wasn't fully going on because you can only know a person's IQ once they start speaking and you can understand their understanding of the game and know if they're high IQ or not from the way they talk about the game, right? Real ones know, they can tell who's like talking about real stuff and in terms that are very exact and where some people talk in vagueness because they don't have the words or understanding to add that context, right? So adding more context to breakdowns. And this is only a snapshot of first Konono. We saw some passing. We've seen a lot of different things from Konono, but I think it's definitely translating from his IQ in a sense and his preparedness. I think in school, he said he was like that kind of like A student, valedictorian kind of person, right? Straight A's, always the best in every class kind of deal. And I think that prepares him to study the game better and has built these great studying habits where he's able to take in a lot more information, organize information, and then utilize information better because he has refined his process over time so sophisticatedly in a sense of large learning dynamic topics and different decisions. It's not necessarily directly to basketball and basketball knowledge, but it is part of his ability to understand that knowledge of the NBA and experience and kind of speed up that IQ because of his abilities to study and learn different things because he's refined that so well. And that's been a key aspect of him as a person, right? I think it's funny that obviously in the hustle play, the, the conversation that they had, it wasn't about basketball. It was about being a person and testing if he's really what he looks like, right? It's about the true kind of final face-to-face job interview where you're meeting the boss, right? And you're talking but you come in prepared thinking they're gonna quiz you about your job, but it's just like trying to figure out what kind of person this is and can this person be relied on and trusted from what they've shown? Because you're about to make a huge gamble. A pick is a gamble, right? You're making a gamble on whether you think this player has upside and enough of it to pick him where you think that he should be picked, right? And they obviously thought Konono was like more of a 20th pick, and he fell. And oh my God, that's great, great Thad trade and back, and still got our guy. Oh, it was beautiful. Masai is a magician when it comes to trading and all that kind of stuff, right? Wow, wow, it's just going to be another steal deal. We'll definitely dive into it deeper, but let's continue on. I think the contract, obviously, we said in the clip that we didn't know his number. 1.5 is pretty high. It's more than what Banton got in his first year. So they're signaling that he is higher on the level of like higher on the level than Banton is, right? And you can indicate talent level and based on interest on money dynamics. So I knew that he was special when they signed him on the MLE and chose to give him a 3-year contract instead of a 2-year kind of unguaranteed deal that most kind of second rounders get. He got more of like a structure of a first round deal. And we talked about that in the extension series, right? So I think ultimately you look at all these signals and understand what the needs were of the team, and understanding not getting any center is specifically almost a microcosm of this game in a sense. He was facing Vucevic one-on-one with no help defense, and a rookie just took an all-star center to work, just took him to work. You know what I mean? And so that's the kind of the contrasting comparisons where the Bulls went for a move, a very now move, and Masai is always building for the future, always many steps ahead of other teams and what they think is happening in the league, right? And that takes incredible scouting and kind of being a great kind of visionary and having the imagination to see what these guys might look as finished products after you're capable of changing a lot of certain things that are capable of being changed, right? Certain things can't be changed, certain things can. And so I think obviously Chris Boucher can't change his height, right? And his balance, okay, yeah, he can improve it, but it's nowhere near the level of Konono's, which and his speed makes him crazy elite in a prospect sense. He doesn't have a lot of the knowledge, like the cup is half empty. Like we're gonna go into that with more recipes when we're touching on the other guys, but they talked about it on the hustle play as well. So let's actually get into this game and kind of see this cross relations of what they're looking for and kind of where he was able to get this match. 10th game in the league, by the way, which is really impressive, right? Age 22, 139 days. Yeah, pretty young still. Wow. You know what I mean? It was a win in Chicago against the Bulls. 9-point win, right? Started, yeah, played 31 minutes. So this was kind of a more expanded role. The matchup was favorable because the Raptors know where this type of center is best at, and it's attacking the Vooch type of centers like Jokic and kind of similar slow-footed, kind of less mobile centers. And Konono and Chris dominate those type of centers, right? But I think Konono with his extra height is just even more of a threat completely. And it's ridiculous. Okay, so let's go through it. All right, 50%, nice. Hit half his shots, great. You know what I mean? Okay, chucked up a 3. Yeah, that's gonna take time. That's gonna take time. It's gonna take 2-3 years, like we've seen in the other guys, to kind of build up. But his shot mechanics look solid. Like I said in that clip, I expect him to become a better 3-point shooter than Boucher. And this is like first year comparison, right? So we're looking at the end of Boucher's first year, and we're looking at the beginning of Konono's first year. I know I don't like small sample size, but I'm just trying to draw connections, and then maybe later on we can definitively draw these lines for concrete. But this is more of an opinion-based thing right now, but time always tells the truth, and trust me, it might become very true soon. So let's see how this kind of fares out more, right? So free throws is he's already pretty decent at free throws because of his shooting mechanics, and I think that's a sign of college where he was a decent free throw shooter, right? Offensive and defensive rebounds looks like the same exact ratio in a sense, right? Like this stuff is gonna mirror eventually, right? In a sense of what they're looking for, but with different upgraded attributes, right? So assists, obviously, Konono is more of a playmaker and has more IQ on that end, and they're gonna look to instill that part, but that's gonna take the longest time to kind of cook in him, right? And we got to be patient with that side. But steals, okay, yeah, I didn't get a steal, but wow, 6 blocks, you know what I mean? Boom. And that's the kind of defensive threat they want, mobile, switchable defensive threat they want, right? Less turnovers. So obviously IQ, he's making less mistakes. And I think that was the big thing, right? IQ and size. That limited the first version of this. But Chris has kind of remolded into a different type of style. And he's talked about it on his thing. I'm not going to go into it now. It'd get too long, right? So let's continue on. Turnovers. Um, yeah, so like Konono, more assists, less turnovers, right? And then personal fouls, the calls are going to be wacky on rookies that are blocking and going for a lot of shots. And then points, obviously, this is an NBA role, right? That's where the upgrade is. He's able to do this at the NBA level with the bigger bodies and stuff, where Boucher was only able to kind of produce this similar result in the G League with the smaller bodies. And I think that's the one thing where the IQ and then the size didn't translate, but we had that corrected in this next prospect, which was the birth of kind of Konono fitting the idea of what we want to build in this first type center. So we'll see. Time will tell. We'll see how Konono fills out and does his thing. But this was definitely one of those games where this is how it starts. They have a couple exciting games, and then we see if they can build on that consistency and show those metrics over the long term consistently, right? And so I think next level for Konono immediately is probably work on that 5 to 10 foot range, because right now with more tape on Konono, they can see that he's more of a straight line guy and needs to work on his kind of around the basket touch. So I think maybe going down to the G League for a couple games to just jack up his inside touches like that to get him over this hump early will stop defenders from fronting so high and being physical and just stopping him from getting anywhere near the net and just kind of eliminating his offense that way, because that's what they did the next game in Chicago, where he was less effective. So we're going to see some of these rookie struggles and kind of calls and different things. But I think ultimately we're looking at the prospect and the kind of way he's developing and kind of the imagination. It takes imagination to see these guys as they truly are. No one saw Chris the way he is now. And that's the revelation that Brian Windhorst was talking about, and they will come to see Konono. Like I've seen the birthings of a really, really key player going forward for us if he can really put things together. And I think we have a great mold at this point. And Boucher, like I said, was signed. Well, let's get into it with my final clip here.
Obviously, we went through everyone's contracts in this kind of everyone's contracts here, right? And I think Koloko, we didn't get a number yet, but I think ultimately his number is in tandem with Boucher's, and kind of position is in tandem with that. So when we need Koloko to kind of step up, that's where his kind of position and money will come from a bit. But obviously, we saw the numbers on this team. I think his role is ultimately to be a mentor to help Koloko. So we got Koloko for 3 years on a rookie contract, and we got Chris Boucher on a 3-year contract, and we see if he can kind of like. So if Koloko is ready by year 2, then we look to maybe trade Chris Boucher in the 3rd year, where he's only making 10 million. So that's like an easier salary to kind of put in, and it would definitely be a more valuable piece to someone if he's making less and kind of still producing the same kind of.
Obviously, from that clip from the summer, I was expecting him to, on his second contract, make it like around like probably 10 million, maybe. We'll see. It depends on how fast he can grow, but obviously, I felt that's where his second contract money, roster spot, minutes would come from in that kind of jumbling of the roster that is already kind of there. And there are a lot of different aspects to the salary and who needs rookie extensions and all that type of stuff. But that's that was another day, and this one's today, and I think we might see that for the future in the next couple of years. We'll obviously chart and see how Konono comes along, but I think obviously we know kind of the metrics and the mold he's trying to hit, and we'll see if he can get there and add a bunch of maybe extra things that we didn't see. You know, like we don't like Masai and Bobby, me, and everyone. Not every time sees a lot of different things, right? So ultimately, time will tell. And let's do some housekeeping. All right, let's get through this a bit quick. 9:30 a.m. Raptors Freak Lex has a stream where diehards meet up and talk about the game and talk about some of the concepts in my videos and stuff. And it's in line with a lot of things that I've been saying. So if you want to check out more about different aspects and the truth in Project Truth, check out his channel too. I'm gonna get to the finally our coach is here because we did touch on the G League, and Jamma, interesting enough, was the coach of Chris Boucher that year. So ultimately, he was directing Chris Boucher in that mold, and he kind of inspired and kind of put that plan into action for us, right? And I think that really signaled to Golden State because they saw Boucher and they saw him real good. They had him for a year and knew exactly what was the issues with him, and the way he got him to play and become a G League MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. They were really looking at that to kind of help their development arm because they were a weak development team before and they hit on a couple guys, but now they're looking to develop the next guys up similar to the Raptors. It's almost like they're copycatting a lot of this stuff. And it's interesting enough in the championship year, Jamma went to bat for Gary Payton II, which he also was playing or was coaching on the Raptors 905, and told him the Golden State management to keep Payton over Avery Bradley, who Curry wanted, and they actually chose to go with Jamma after he went hard to bat for Peyton, and we saw how successful Peyton was and Avery Bradley turned out. And it's interesting, off that move, they kind of moved him up front bench, like maybe grooming him to maybe become the next Kerr when Kerr steps down, maybe kind of groom him and see in that position. And I think that opportunity is open for other guys on our team, right? That we build them up and we don't have to be upset that they leave. Be happy that they got these prominent positions, front bench, sitting beside one of the greatest players in the world, right? our freaking Canadian guy that we built up, Canadian through and through, Jamma, my man Jamma, is sitting beside babyface assassin, and that's where he's now talking and coaching and relaying information to Steph and stuff, and he's on the front bench, and the front bench means a lot, right? So I think I wanted to congratulate him on his success, and not to like disparage that he's not here, because we have another great prospect in the pipeline that we've had for a while, because this picture was taken when we won the championship, and he's with, you know what I mean, the owner and shit, and his wife and his baby is probably older now and stuff. This is younger Eric Curry, and it's his first season as head coach in the G League, which Jamma had that position before. And I think it's really interesting that in the aspect of this video, Chris learned from him, and if Konono goes down there, he's going to learn from Eric Curry. And I want to wish him the best. He seems like a really great, interesting mold type of like an analytical, like computer brain coach, instead of a guy that's come up dealing with players, more learning through the game from preference and feel, and more based in numbers and logic and analytics, because I love logic thinking. So I could see this man and what he's done, and obviously I want to throw that up there to give him cahoots, because he's also a Toronto's man's and actually graduated from the University of U of T. So salute to our Canadian peeps. Trust in Masai, Project Truth always. Salute real ones. Logical Raptors Fanatic out. Mike G, mic drop.